Services. Advice Northwest. I'd just like to point out to anyone joining the webinar online can take an active part in the discussion by submitting your questions in the chat box facility on the screen. And at this point, I would just like to highlight that if you do want to ask a question, your name will remain anonymous and will only be seen by me and the media team. Jacqueline and Rosaline, there are many topics that we could talk about tonight, but this is a bite-sized information webinar, just to give some insight into the work of Advice Northwest and the support you can offer our local households. So in the time available to us, there are two particular areas that are affecting a lot of households at the minute that I'd like to focus on, and that is the changeover to universal credit benefit and also debt advice. So Rosaline, if I could just come to yourself first.
Yeah.
For anyone who's never used Advice Services Northwest before, can you tell us a bit about the organisations and the areas that you can provide advice on?
Well, as you just highlighted there at the beginning, Lord Mayor, that we do everything from employment, debt, appeals, benefit advice, housing rights. Really, if it's something that you have and we don't have the answer, we can find the answer for you. But really, it's quite a lot of scope right across the board. There isn't anything we don't give advice in. We're particularly getting into quite a big area now with universal credit. So yeah, I was going to leave you to.
Yeah. See on the is there any charges for your services?
No, our service is free, impartial advice. So no judgment scheme. It's for any age, any age, anyone at all, doesn't matter. We're there available. We have a drop-in service. We have advice online. We have an advice calls. You can call in, you can drop in, you can make an appointment. We have 3 offices. We have one in Derry City side, the Embassy building, one over in Spencer House Waterside. We've one in Dock Street in Strabane. And we also have the Macmillan advisors who are part of Advice Northwest that are based up in Agnes Jones House in Derry at the Anthony Galvin Hospital. So, I mean, we cover a very fast. We've also got quite a lot of outreaches throughout Derry and a few out throughout Strabane as well. So, you know, we're pretty spread out. If you can't get into an office, we do have outreaches, and you can go on our website and find that information out. And all the contact details and email is on our website, Advice Northwest Facebook page.
That's lovely. Rosalie, just again, as we know, universal credit is very topical at the moment, given a lot of people are now migrating over to that type of benefit. Can you give us a wee bit of background to that, and us moving to universal credit compulsory?
Right. So all the benefits, there's legacy benefits, which is called income related ESA, income support, housing benefit, work and tax credits, child tax credits, and income related job seekers are what they are now calling legacy benefits. They're all getting migrated eventually over to universal credit. So universal credit is a benefit for anyone who's over 16 under state pension age. You can, and who would have fitted into like the job seekers on limited capability for work, lone parents, people who are working on low incomes getting child tax credits, working tax credits, people in low income getting housing benefit. That's all been converted into universal credit, which is one benefit that covers all of those areas. So within the universal credit, you'll have a standard allowance, and then depending if you have a child, you'll have a child element. If you have a disability, you'll have a limited capability for work element. So it's different, and housing element, and it's all made up into one payment. Now, you're asking about the migration. They are slowly migrating people over to universal credit. So at the minute, it's anybody that's on tax credits only and none of the other legacy benefits who are going to get migrated over to universal credit. Letters have started going out from the 16th of October, I think it was. We're seeing a lot more of them coming in now, but eventually by 2028, they will hope to have everybody who is on those legacy benefits that I named moved over to universal credit. But at the minute, it is only the people on tax credits who are getting the letters, and you have 3 months to migrate over. You'll be given a date. It's a deadline, but there's a final deadline, which is actually a month after that again. So if they haven't made the claim within the first 3 months, they will have another month to make the claim.
Okay, that's great to get that clarity, Rosalie. But how do people actually apply for this benefit? Is it an online application, and can Advice Northwest help people complete the application form either online or in paper form?
Yeah, well, there's no paper form. Universal credit is all online. All applications. The one thing that I just wanted to say before you do migrate over, you should contact us and have a benefit check done to make sure that you're on all the benefits that you should be in the legacy before you get migrated to universal credit. If you get the letter to migrate over, they say that you will have a transitional protection for 12 months. So you shouldn't be any worse off on universal credit that you were if you were in your tax credits and you only, or what other benefit. So there is transitional protection, but you need to make sure you have all your entitlements before you move over so you can maximize your income. We can assist doing the applications. You can have an appointment. We can actually do the applications over the phone because we can access it as it's online. Client would just need to have an email address and a telephone number so that they can receive a code. They create a username, a password, security questions, and then that's your account created, and then it's just a matter of applying it. But yes, any of our advisors can do the applications, as I said, appointment or by phone.
Yeah. I did mention at the start of this webinar that Dove House and the Resource Centre also can help people with their benefits, etc. And along with yourselves, and the Advice Northwest have got a far-reaching, I suppose, spread. But is there anyone else out there who can help people if they don't manage to get appointments with those that I have mentioned?
Well, if you we should be able to get appointment in any of this advice services. We would make the time, especially when there's deadlines and stuff like that. We would make sure that we would have them in. The one thing that I was going to say is if you have someone who's very vulnerable that can't use the internet, can't use the laptop, doesn't have access to the internet. Some rural areas don't, because you have to have access to the internet. They do have, the Social Security offices are set up to accommodate vulnerable people, so that they can operate their accounts from there and use the telephone to contact them by text or by phoning them if anything needs done on their journal. So it does allow for that within the Social Security offices as well.
Yeah. I just want to touch on, that's grand for people who are able to get out of their home. But what if a person's in hospital and they're given a deadline? Are there any circumstances where the deadline can be extended? But also, there's a lot of people out there that we know that for one reason or another, they're housebound. They aren't computer literate. So, how can your organisation help that type of situation?
Well, as I said there, we can do the applications over the phone. We can have the client on the phone, and we're the person operating the application on this end. I've got my laptop, I'm making it, and I'll get all the details. We can make them aware during the application, if we're doing the application, that we're helping them make the application. It is a question on universal credit. Did you get help, and why you helping it? So we at that stage can notify universal credit that this is a vulnerable client, can't get out of the house. You're going to have to find another method of contacting for, because they have to allow that, especially here in Northern Ireland, and we have a lot of rural areas as well that travel. You mightn't get the bus, and it mightn't be there in time. Regarding being in hospital, those are situations and circumstances that we can actually get it extended. It does allow for it to be extended, especially if it's something like you're in hospital and you can't get it out. You can push to get it extended, and we can do that on their behalf as well.
And then also, Mayor, obviously, if somebody is housebound, we in Advice Northwest could offer a home visitation for that client to ensure then that the application is made for them. You know, that we can do a home visitation if somebody requires that assistance without any problem at all, Mayor.
Yeah.
I know for myself as a counsellor, you know, we get many calls regarding benefits, and while I would be very reluctant to give any type of advice on benefits, I would rather direct them to the professional organisations who are trained to give that advice. But maybe for people living out there, I have been often asked, you know, if they're single parent with children, they work part-time, 16 hours, would they be entitled to universal credit?
Well, every person's situation is different now. So it depends on the circumstances, depends on how much they're earning, if there's any capital. What I would say is, no matter what your circumstances, everybody should have a benefit check done. Because it's not just about benefits. There are other actual entitlements that could be non-means tested benefits. There may be other things like health costs that you help with. Well, for now to get healthy rates, you have to be on universal credit. But then if you're over state pension age, things are different. If you have a child under 16, there's different benefits. If you have a child with disabilities, if you have a disability, if there's care and responsibilities, like you really don't understand. You mightn't think that you're entitled to anything. For instance, I'm just giving an example. I did a calculation the last day, and there was an entitlement of £728 per month. And the client actually did not even know that they were entitled to it. And they had just rang, you know, it was just like, I'm going to check it. But no matter who rings us, if you're talking to somebody, it'll click in you and you go, hold on a wee minute here. You know, when was the last time you had a benefit check? Let's check this for you, you know. So I do advise everybody's situation is different. So every person should have a benefit check done.
And just today, I was down at Colmore Community Hub, and there was a group of women there, and they were talking about how they had just read on the letter of their rates bill that if they're over 70 and live alone, that they can get 20%. So there's a lot of benefits there. There's a lot of help out there that people don't know that they are entitled to, and you know, so
I think that's one of the greatest myths. You know, people talk about people who are on benefits. You know, a lot of people think, oh, they're getting all they're entitled to. But even if you look at pension credit, for example, the elderly, you know, there's a lot of people not claiming what's rightfully theirs. And remember, I think, you know, obviously these webinars are fantastic, Mayor, and it's a great opportunity to be able to share with householders and anybody watching. But it would take an advice worker probably about 10 to 15 minutes to do a benefit check. And it's so, benefit uptake is so important because people think, oh, people on benefits are rested in benefits and they're getting a lot of help. But really it is a myth, because there's a lot of benefits not claimed that people are entitled to, particularly pension credit. Pension credit is one that a lot of older people or elderly people, you know, they just rest on their benefits. They think, well, I'm grand, you know, I can manage what I have. And pride does come under it, you find, with older people, pride. And but definitely a benefit check is so vital.
Very important.
Very important. And it would only take about 10 minutes, you know.
So that is the main advice: always get a benefit check.
Always get a benefit check,
I've also had people come to me, and I suppose other counsellors as well, and yourselves, that maybe for whatever reason they were no longer employed and maybe had a few pounds savings, you know, behind them, and they didn't think that they would be entitled to benefits. Well, so, you know, in that situation, again, a benefit check is vital, but it's actually getting out there that they don't have to use their savings to live on, that they can apply for help.
Well, if you do have capital, there's contribution-based benefits as well, you know, especially if they've just been made redundant or become employed and stuff like that. But I mean, capital does come into certain benefits, but there may be, as again, you wouldn't know until you check. But all capital, this is a misconception. People think that if they have, for instance, universal credit, the maximum capital 16,000. Well, £6,000 disregarded. And then the £10,000, if it was the legacy benefits, every £250 counts as £1. So every £1,000 only counts as £4 income. They don't take the full £1,000 into consideration. And for
Right.
pension credits, it's higher. Every £1,000 only counts as £2. So it's
Right.
called a tariff income. So just because you have capital may not mean, you may think I'm not entitled, but again, you need to ask, because if you don't ask, you'll never know, and you'll just assume.
That's very good, even in my position. So I'd be able to advise people, no, definitely go and get that benefit check. Can you receive another benefit when you're receiving universal credit, or is it all amalgamated under the one?
No, you can be on the likes of personal independence payment and receive universal credit. And then you can get help with rates from the Land and Property Services, which is on top of that as well. But for the actual universal credit, it is, as I said before, replacing like the sickness benefit, the job seekers allowance, housing benefit, work and tax credits, and income support. So that's the 5 benefits that's been replaced, and that's the 5 elements that have been put into universal credit. So you could have your child benefit and universal credit, and as I said, PIP, child benefit and universal credit, or your help rates and help with health costs, as well as universal credit.
Oh, that's great. You did mention that it was just tax credits now that were migrating over, but there are people on other legacy benefits. So I think I heard 2028 that is that on target?
Well, I personally don't think so, but we'll have to wait and see, because nothing's been on target with universal credit since it started, really. I think they thought everybody would jump on board and claim universal credit, but then people realised they might be slightly worse off by doing that. So they've offered the transitional protection when they're moving anybody in legacy benefits over. Now it is tax credits at the minute, so it's tax credits only. That may change to tax credits and housing benefit only, and it'll move on. But we have been told the last to move will be the ESA. And they hope that they'll be the last benefit to move over, and they'll be moved. They hope it'll all be done by 2028. But as I said, we'll just have to wait, because it only started in October. So I wouldn't migrate yourself until you have a benefit check done. Even if you haven't got a migration letter, do get the benefit check done, because sometimes you could be better off on universal credit. It depends on your circumstances, but don't do anything till you get advice. That's my advice.
And even Mayor, it was piloted. The DFC did a pilot on a skilling in West Belfast. They looked at a rural area and an urban area, and there was 500 people piloted it on the UC migration. And it was interesting that there was a number of people that dropped off that didn't actually migrate over. And whenever we went back to DFC to find out, what was the profile of the people that didn't migrate over. And it could have been maybe farmers or self-employed or worried or concerned, and didn't actually just migrate over. So I think we're learning a lot from the pilot and with the use and with the migration over. Because a lot of people are worried, and as Rosalie said, are thinking, oh my God, I have too much capital, I have too much in savings. I'm not going to bother. I can see that UC universal credit, and because of all the myths around it, I'm going to be worse off. Am I going to be worse off? Will it be painful for me? So particularly now, just this week, coming up this week, the DFC are sending out 5,000 letters per day for the migration. So it's a major flow now of the migration letters coming out. And so if you think 5,000 per day, it's a lot going to be happening at Derry City and Strabane. There'll be a lot happening soon. But another point which I think is important just to raise is in April, in April, we will have the uprating of benefits by 6.9%. So definitely hold off, get your uprating of your benefits,
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
before you would migrate. You know,
I mean,
get your
we
uprating come April.
we'll be there through the whole journey. You know, we'll be
Yeah.
there to assess them from making the application to it's up and running. If there's any problems after it, we are there from day one. They can come to us and say, listen, this is in my work journal, what I do, how do I do this, and we can guide them right along the way. We'll always be there
Yeah.
for them.
Sure. Even though, Mayor, there, you know, there would be even single parents, lone parents with young children, who are getting migration letters, or even lone parents who are working maybe 16 hours and they're getting messages on their journal. Say, for example, if they've 3 children under 5 and the youngest is 2 years of 2, people are getting notifications on the journal. You must contact your work coach. You must, you know, start looking and preparing for work. And lone parents going, I'm working 16 hours. What are they on about? They want me to increase hours. But all these different regulations around universal credit. So even if you have a child of 2 who's coming on to preschool, maybe reaching the age of 3, then appointments with your work coach are almost compulsory for you to start preparing for gainful employment and increasing your hours, you know. So I would urge the public and the householders listening tonight to the webinar that we have 3 fabulous advice organisations, and we're really, really fortunate in Dove House, the Resource Centre, and ourselves, and they're gold-rated advice providers there for the people, and always have been. And we work collaboratively together, and it's vitally important that people seek that advice, and they can speak to us. And you know, obviously the people at Derry and Strabane, they always want to speak to. They see we're independent, and we're independent of government, and that's very important to the people, because they know that they can come. They can go to the DFC obviously as well, and the Brew and Social Security, but I think people can be a wee bit, you know, careful. Or we need to speak to the advice sector first. That's really important. We have the 3 providers. Excellent.
Yeah.
And just make the phone call, email, come in person, visit. You know, get that advice. It's so important to seek independent advice. The independency of advice is vitally important.
Yeah. Well, Rosalind, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
That was great information regarding the benefit situation. Jacqueline, I wanted to talk now a wee bit about debt advice. You know, we're just coming out of Christmas, and it's a natural time for all those debt letters, maybe credit card letters, whatever debt people get themselves in to ensure that their families have a nice Christmas. And there's very few of us that escape without having some sort of debt in our lives. You know, at the time, I suppose, that we take that debt, we can afford to repay, but things change, and people's lives change. So who can people come to if they find themselves in difficulty with having to repay the debt that they got themselves into?
Right, Mayor, just like you've said, we're coming out of Christmas, and the bills are starting to arrive now, January into February, and people are fearful, and they've been struggling. Like we have all come through, you know, challenging 3-4 years, because we seem to have moved from one calamity to another. We had the global pandemic, with the cost of living crisis, which we're still trying to navigate through, with the welfare reform, migration to universal credit, and people are struggling. There's no doubt that people are struggling and worried about, how am I going to make these? How am I going to make ends meet? How am I going to pay my bills? And it's a circumstance. It's just a slight change, or a unexpected bill, or a non-expected event in anybody's lives, or they can get on the debt. And it could be the loss of a partner, it could be a bereavement, it could be marital breakdown, it can actually be the birth of a child, and maybe somebody then is moving from full pay to going to statutory maternity pay. That drop in income can make things very, very difficult for people. And you know, obviously people now, even with respect to the cost of living, are using their credit cards to maybe pay for the essentials like food. You know, people are for essentials. But the first thing that I would always say is Advice Northwest have skilled and trained money debt advisors, and those debt advisors have to be regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. So they're regulated with the Financial Conduct Authority, and they also are intermediaries. They're regulated intermediaries with the Insolvency Service to provide debt advice. The first thing that I would say to anybody who is feeling that burden of being in debt, it's awful. It's an awful, awful feeling. People are worried, how am I going to pay these bills? And debt is not something that we freely talk about. That's why it's fabulous tonight, Mayor, that you've taken this initiative to talk about debt. And I would like the whole speaking about money and money problems to be in the end of everybody's lips, because we've made great strides in our city and district around talking about mental ill health. And people can now open up and talk about being unwell, maybe suffering from depression, and with fabulous organisations obviously dealing with that. But debt is always sort of seen as being deviant to the norm. God, I'm affronted, I'm ashamed, I'm in debt, what am I going to do? And even within couples and within families, talking about money and talking about debt, it's so difficult. We don't feel free or easy speaking about it. So it's something that I think throughout the rest of your tenure that we could get into more, maybe speaking about debt,
Yeah.
because people are really struggling. But I would advise people contact yourselves. Advice Northwest would have the money advice officers both in Derry and Strabane, and as I said, regulated in that respect to deal with people's debt affairs. But sometimes what happens that I find is that the crying cat gets the milk. So if you owe money to somebody and that creditor is texting you, sending you letters continually, and sometimes people panic and think, jeepers, I would need to pay them first. I would need to pay that creditor who is, texting and etc. But what is vitally important for people is pay priority debts first. And what I mean by that, Mayor, is where there could be a greater sanction upon you if you didn't pay, for example, your mortgage, your rent, your electric, tax. But look at priority, your priority, keeping a roof over your head. But sometimes people think, oh my God, I might need this bank or building society or to get a loan in the future. So what people start doing is, I need to pay them. And so then to the detriment of, of their own liberty, by not paying mortgage or not paying rent, they're at risk, with more severe sanctions, possibly with house repossession, etc. So the most vital important is if somebody contacts us, what we will do is we will look at, first of all, we'll look at the liability for the debt. Do they owe the money that they're supposed to owe? Do they owe? Are they liable for the debt? When, particularly around bereavement, because if a partner dies or a spouse pass away, does the debt die with them, or are they still liable for that debt? So we would check the liability for the debt. Again, we will do a maximisation of income to ensure that everybody's receiving what they're entitled to and rightfully theirs. And then we will draw up standard financial statement, and we will look at priority debts first. That's the main thing to be paid. And then we will look at the non-priority debt, like credit cards, store cards, catalogs, doorstep lenders, that type of thing. Then we will look at thereafter. But there's many legal remedies to dealing with debt. We've got 5 main areas where we can look at the option with the person in debt, and because they could possibly be entitled to apply for a debt relief order, bankruptcy, a debt management plan, an IVA, which is an individual voluntary arrangement, or a CVA, So there's so many options out there, Mayor, that people can access,
Yeah,
to help them, and will ease their burden and ease their worry in their mind. Because I've had clients that within relationships and within partnerships, that will say to their spouse or partner, "Oh, I'm taking up walking. I'm taking up walking in the mornings. I'm going to get fit. I'm going to have a more, particularly at this time of year, and I'm going to get more healthy." And they're going out walking in the morning. And one of my clients was not going out walking in the morning. She was going out to see if she could bump into the postman. And she was trying to bump into the postman every morning to get the letters before they drop in the mat, and the other partner might find out. So they're desperate situations and circumstances that people are going through, and then their mental health is suffering.
yeah,
Their mental health, and then their doctor, they're getting depressed, they're physically ill, they're mentally unwell. But I have researched and I have done a pre and post death intervention. So I have looked at clients who have come to ourselves maybe a year ago, and they've come in with plastic bags full of envelopes, and many of those envelopes, Mayor, unopened.
yeah.
They're scared to open the envelope because they know what it is. And the envelope is going behind the clock on the mantelpiece, and it's building up and building up. And people are burying their head in the sand like the ostrich, scared. But those deaths and those envelopes will still come. It won't go away.
Yeah.
You're better to seek advice.
Yeah.
And when I looked 6 months later at those same clients,
Yeah.
the anxiety had left. They
Yeah.
could sleep better. Their whole worries were eased.
Mhm.
And honestly, seeking help, no matter if I owe £500 maybe to yourself, Mayor, and that £500 could be playing in my mind all the time, and I could worry about that. And then there's other people who could have £50,000 in debt, and they it may not affect them that way. But if I could really stress, please lift the phone
Yeah.
or walk into our office, because they will be met with empathetic advisors.
Yeah.
And that's the one main thing you need in our role, to have empathy and care for others, because nobody knows what tomorrow's going to bring.
No.
Nobody knows. Our circumstances can change like that. And ill health, or a death, or a birth, for some reason, any reason at all, we could find ourselves struggling.
Yeah.
And the message that I would like to get out to people is, please seek advice. And you will honestly be much better after periods of time. And I am acutely aware that they build up that courage to make that phone call or to come through that door. That is the first step to more peace of mind, more contentment, more ease sleeping. And we will deal with everybody with care, with empathy, confidential. Not a single word said would go anywhere. Anybody come through that door. We pride ourselves, Mayor, we would pride ourselves in a non-judgmental, confidential, free and impartial service. And it's vitally important, because all those different legal remedies are available.
Yeah.
For people.
Jacqueline, you see these advertisements, especially on the television, about consolidating all your debt. What would your advice be? If a person has multiple debts to maybe credit cards and payday loans and all of those type of things, and you have this advertisement coming on, we'll leave you alone, you can consolidate your debt. But really, you're getting into more debt, aren't you? So what would your advice be to those people who would be tempted to do that?
Yeah, the first thing I would say, Mayor, is you're better coming to ourselves where the advice is free.
Yeah.
Advice Northwest has no financial interest in anybody's money.
Yeah.
So if anybody owes money to a creditor, we take no financial interest or no financial gain. So total impartiality is vitally important, and ensuring you go to a free service. Because even if you Google I'm in debt, who can help me, it'll be all these fee paying agencies that will pop up, you know, they'll pop up. So in the majority of cases, from my experience, the consolidating of debt is not something that I would recommend. Now, however, if you have small amounts of money and you can consolidate that debt and maybe get a very, very low APR, annual percentage rate, interest rate, you could maybe possibly look at it. But I certainly wouldn't recommend anybody consolidating any debts without seeking the free advice. I wouldn't recommend consolidation of debt without seeking advice first, Mayor.
Yeah. Well, Jacqueline, thanks very much for that. And I know tonight we've talked a lot about universal credit. And for a lot of people out there, universal credit means just for people who don't work. But we know that that's not the case, that people can work and also claim universal credit. But even if you don't, you're not entitled to universal credit. Advice Northwest and those other benefit and advisors, they're for everyone in our community, and not just for those who are in receipt of benefit. So I would be advising everybody out there to come to the likes of yourselves to get, first of all, get that benefit check, because you could be working and also be entitled to universal credits. But also if you are in benefits, to get that benefit checked. I think that's the most important thing that come out of this here tonight. And also the debt advice too. But just to finish, Jacqueline and Rosemary, what would you say to anyone who's struggling and needs help, but has never used services of Advice Northwest or any other advice partners and council? I know the big thing that has come out of here is benefit check, but you know, is there anything else that you can advise people who are just maybe reluctant? How do they take that step? Would it be maybe for them to phone the likes of a counsellor, you know, or to try and get them to be the go-between, but between the different organisations, or there's something else, maybe their doctor, health visitor, you know?
We get a lot of referrals from other bodies, you know, that's maybe counsellors, or actually the doctors, social workers, floating support as well. You know, we do get a lot of people come and going, well, I have this client, you know, or a community group, I have this person, they wanted to know, but they're a wee bit, you know, we get the gist of it. We'll ask them if there's any more. It's always best to talk to the client, but I think once they get a wee bit of information, they feel more confident, and they usually end up talking to us then, and they realize, you know, but we do get referrals from outside organizations, so that's not a problem. We can take them that way as well, Mayor.
I think through the trusted partners, and we do have a lot of hard to reach groups, Mayor, within our council area. You know, obviously they're hard to reach and they're quite reluctant. But I remember a few years back, and you know, because I'm always very concerned about people in debt, because I know there's many people who are at home and you know, they're isolated, and particularly since post-COVID, you know, we don't have that same level of people going out and utilising services. People have become very settled at home, you know. And I remember speaking to priests and churches and Salvation Army, you know, saying to the church leaders, you wouldn't say at Mass if anybody's struggling, or if anybody has any issues around debt or deprivation, or any concerns, you know, because that, you know, obviously people with faith will be at their local church on the Sunday, and, you know, just trying to get the word out, even through our GPs, our doctor surgeries, and our hospitals, you know, and also we would take a lot of email each day from local constituency offices of all our political parties. which is vital. But obviously people will have built up that trust and that knowing someone. And so I think just that encouragement to make that step, and I know it's hard, particularly around some areas, and specifically as we mentioned around being in debt, because it is seen as being so deviant to the norm. But speaking about it now, I think it's been wonderful, Mayor. Thank you. But I think whoever somebody trusts, whoever, if it's a teacher, if it's a principal, if it's a priest, you know, a reverend, whoever, and they get access to that help, see, making that step, making that move, it's a great achievement on itself. And I know that when somebody makes that move and they harness that and respect that, because that is a big step for someone. They say, I need help, can you help me? And we're all reluctant within our own selves and in our lives. And we sometimes feel a bit ashamed or maybe around being, you know, but I do need help. But making that step and doing it and asking for help, so important, Mayor.
Well, Jacqueline and Rosaline, I have really enjoyed our conversation tonight. It has been really informative for myself. And, you know, and thank you very much, the both of you, for sharing the very valuable information. And I want to, you know, say very well done to yourselves, the organisation that you represent, and all the other organisations out there who offer this invaluable help for the citizens of our council district.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Our webinar tonight has been recorded and will be available for other people to view, maybe if they want to look at it again, just to maybe catch something that maybe they didn't get full scope of. But if you want to look at it again, it can be viewed on www.derrystrabane.com/help-with-cost-of-living. And I would encourage everyone out there to please check out our council's webpage for other information and support that is available across a range of organisations in our council area, because as I've said at the start of this webinar, I have done 2 other webinars already with another one to come, and there is valuable information to be got on there. So without further ado, folks, I know you are after a long, hard day at work. Good night, and I look forward to seeing you all soon for the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Night.